Today, we're going to be talking about the high mercury content in Western North America. Mercury is a metal that occurs naturally in the West. It is usually contained in soil, water, or the atmosphere. Methylmercury is the most dangerous form of mercury and is found in aquatic ecosystems. Methylmercury occurs when mercury bonds with carbon. This high content of methylmercury can have numerous negative environmental impacts. In high enough concentrations, methylmercury can be lethal. Mercury affects the nervous and reproductive systems of an organism and is especially dangerous for organisms still developing into adulthood. Mercury contamination is the leading cause of fish advisories in North America. It is also responsible for the decline of many species, including the ivory gull population. The ivory gull is now considered to be a near-threatened species after experiencing an 80 to 85% population decrease in the past 30 years due to mercury poisoning. Mercury enters the environment from the atmosphere, geological sources, old mines, and re-released mercury stored in vegetation and soil. Mercury enters the atmosphere through direct natural emissions like volcanic eruptions, the emission of fossil fuels, urbanization and land disruption, agriculture, wildfires, and plants and soils re-releasing it into the atmosphere. One of the biggest causes of mercury contamination in the West is due to the old gold and silver mines left over from the gold rush. Miners would use mercury to help them mine the valuable goods and due to its abundance in the area, it would accidentally release into the environment when they were mining. Mercury was both released into the atmosphere and into the water through mercury-contaminated runoff. These mines helped to cause the high levels of methylmercury found in many western watersheds today. The smaller watersheds are most affected by the methylmercury because there is less place for the chemical to go, causing it to be found in higher quantities than in the bigger watersheds where it can be more spread out. Mercury tends to be more prevalent in areas with high precipitation. Forested areas retain more mercury, while semi-arid areas release more mercury.
Mercury emissions know no national or continental boundaries. Mercury emitted into the air can travel thousands of miles in the atmosphere before it is eventually deposited back into the earth in the form of rainfall. How much mercury is emitted worldwide each year? Estimates of annual global mercury emission sources are in the range of 5,000 to 8,000 metric tons per year. These estimates also include mercury that is re-emitted. In most climate change scenarios, storms become less frequent and more intense. This results in larger amounts of mercury being released from the soil through erosion and ending up in our rivers, lakes, or oceans. Mercury that reaches the surface waters is processed by naturally occurring bacteria into methylmercury. This methylmercury is an extremely toxic form of mercury that bioaccumulates in the food web. Cleaning up a spill can be done by one of two methods, via amalgamation or insolubilization. Both methods will turn mercury into non-vaporizing forms. Insolubilization requires the mercury to be mixed into a sulfide, whereas amalgamation mixes the mercury with one or more metals into a solid that is easier to collect and dispose of. The Clean Air Act of 1963 was the first attempt at regulating various air toxins such as mercury. It directed the EPA in establishing standards for mercury emission sources. Under the Clean Water Act of 1972, states adopted water quality standards for the rivers, streams, lakes, and wetlands. Such standards identify acceptable mercury pollution levels in water. These levels must be met in order to protect human health. Because of the Clean Water Act, no person may release mercury into the waters unless they have a permit to do so. The Safe Drinking Water Act also sets water quality standards for public drinking water, as to limit mercury contamination. Mercury can enter the water system by three ways: erosion of natural deposits of mercury, discharges into water from refineries or factories, or by runoff from landfills and cropland. Finally, the mercury export ban of 2008 intended to reduce the availability of mercury in domestic and in international markets. By reducing the supply, the act aimed to reduce global mercury use for commercial purposes.